So yeah, Daniel, welcome to the podcast, man. For those who are listening, this is Daniel from Producer Royalty. He makes a lot of producer content, specifically around the legal side, which is quite niche and quite important because I know so many producers have a lot of questions when it comes to like placements, how to deal with things on the back end, getting paid, anything like that. So it's good that you're making this content because there's not really anyone out there doing it. I've maybe seen a couple of people making some videos, but yeah, it's good to have you on, man. I'm sure we've got a lot of questions to ask you. But how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate all the platforms that you guys have built individually and to see you guys all together on the same show. I actually didn't know that you guys had this show. I've seen all you
Yeah,
guys
it's really
before, so it's
super low
super
key.
dope that you guys do this. Yeah, but I know
Everyone
it's going to
says
be a
that.
big thing.
Maybe it's too low key. Maybe we need to
Yeah.
do a better job at promoting it because we don't really post any short form content or anything.
Mm.
We were having conversations regularly anyway, so we thought let's just record them, make it a weekly thing, and if people find it and like it, then sick. But it wasn't like a main focus.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well, you guys talk about some great stuff. So if for the listeners, it's your first time listening, I would definitely recommend subscribing and checking out the rest of the conversation. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate that, man.
And you're
What's
based in
what's
Bali,
new with
right?
you?
Yeah, so from New York initially, and the blessing about what we've built, similar to a lot of producers, is we are able to live anywhere in the world that we want for the most part. So
Hmm.
I moved to Bali for the last 2 months. We're in the process of launching the first producer specializing law firm. So I'm in the in-between stage of launching that. So I figured I'd move out to Bali for a few months and connect with some entrepreneurs out here, like-minded people, and get to practice every day, meeting new people and presenting myself and explaining ideas and pitching what we do to an audience that has no idea what we do. So for those people that are in the entrepreneur space, I definitely recommend Bali. For producers, I'm not too sure. I mean, the Ocean might have a better
Mm.
perspective than me, but Bali is a great place to go, the best place to go, in my opinion. But as a digital nomad.
Yeah, to me, Bali seems like the lifestyle. What do you call it? Like the lifestyle wellness capital right now.
Yeah.
So many good gyms that I keep seeing popping up on my Instagram stories and like crazy ice baths and saunas and all healthy food, that kind of vibe.
Definitely. But there's also a lot of distractions out here too. It's pretty hard to,
Oh yeah.
it's easy to find whatever you're looking for. It's definitely a party capital at the same time too. So
Oh,
you can
really?
find
I
whatever you're
hear
looking
that.
for though.
I feel like a lot of people move to Bali to go and find themselves. I think everyone
Yeah.
that I've known to move to Bali has been on like some type of spiritual journey like that. I've never been though, but it looks amazing, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love it. Definitely. I could talk about Bali all day, but I think the viewers probably rather hear about producer stuff. So we could get into some
Yeah.
producer stuff.
Well, tell us how you got into it because like tell us your background, like how you got educated yourself and how you started producer royalty and ended up interviewing quite a few people as well.
For sure. So I had a lot of friends growing up that wanted to be artists. I was their manager, and I realized as a manager, you're pretty dependent on somebody else's success. So when I discovered entertainment law when I was in college, I realized that that was basically kind of like being a manager, except you could spread you have a ton of clients rather than a couple guys that you're focused on. So when I
Hmm.
discovered that, I decided to go full force into being an entertainment lawyer. I looked up every lawyer on the internet I could find that was a music lawyer because I was more interested in music. And I discovered a couple young lawyers that were able to build a name for themselves pretty quickly, get known in the community, seem to have some type of success. And I noticed a couple things that worked well for them. For one, they branded themselves within the culture, and they seemed like they were outside and they knew some people and stuff like that. For two, they made content and they were big on educating people online. That's how they were able to build a base. And three, a lot of them work with producers. So shout out Carl Folks, Adam Friedman, Matt
Mm.
Booster. Those are some of the lawyers I looked up to, and they all focused on producer rights. So I was like, I'm going to take what they did and just try to expand it to a whole different level. Do what they did and make it way bigger while I'm in law school, so I could have some type of base for that way when I'm done with law school. I could build a law firm around that. I started producer royalty while I was in law school. I was working with Adam Friedman, and 95% of what he had me doing was helping producers with clearances and getting paid for their songs. And one day he looked at me, he was like, this isn't even legal work necessarily. This is a lot of this is just admin work and payment chasing. And like a light bulb flickered in my head, and I was like,
Mm.
okay, bet. So I'm gonna start a company now before I'm a lawyer that specifically is dedicated to the pain point of helping producers make sure they're collecting all the money they're owed from their placements So that's what we did, and very quickly within the last 2 years, it's been 2 years. It's grown into one of the fastest growing companies in the music industry because it's that big of a pain point for producers, and we've collected almost 3 million at this point, and have worked with hundreds of guys, and it's been a blessing. And through the content, I've just content is the funnel for all that. That's how people
Hmm.
find out about us. That's how we built the brand and do outreach, and people can revert back to the brand. We've interviewed a lot of top guys as well too through that. So. Yeah, that's how we got into it, and we offer a couple of services that maybe we could get into. But that's the
Definitely.
essence of what producer royalty is the company focused on making sure that producers are collecting all the money they're owed. And through the content, since my background is in law, I try to talk about the legal side more than anybody ever has. So
Yeah, it's good that you're
Yeah.
doing that because there's not many lawyers on YouTube giving free game like that. So it's real valuable. Like you said, like so many producers, they have all these questions about how do I get paid? What happens when I get a placement? Like everyone kind of scratches their head when it comes to things like that because there's so much terminology, and I feel like most producers don't really understand even the basics of how copyright works. So maybe that'd be a good place to start there. Maybe just break down what the main two copyrights are. Like what happens when you make a beat, who owns the copyright, what happens when you get a placement, and how that differs compared to a label artist and an independent artist. Maybe just walk someone through the basics and what they should know really.
yeah, so I mean, the most basic thing that everybody in music that works on the business side of music or has any type of revenue that comes from music needs to know is there's two copyrights behind music. I'm sure most of you guys have heard this, listeners have heard this a bunch of times, but if you haven't, you need to understand it very thoroughly. There's the master recording and there's the composition. The composition is an unrecorded song, which is kind of made up if you were to write the lyrics and the notes onto a piece of paper, is how it helps me to vision it. And the master recording is if you were to record that unrecorded song, if you were to perform the lyrics and the notes onto a recorded version, then you're making a master recording. They each generate their own set of royalties. So publishing producers typically get 50% in the United States. I know you guys in the UK do it a little bit different sometimes, but in the United States usually 50% of the publishing goes to the beat makers, whoever made the beat, and then 50% goes to the artists. In the UK, correct me if I'm wrong, in your experience, is it more like if there's three artists and one producer, will the producer get 50%? I know it depends, but what has your experience been?
Yeah, usually with my experience, it would be like producers split their share, artists split their share. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, like you'll know everything's negotiable, so it doesn't always work out like that. Especially when it comes to, like the master side, like we can get into that soon, but I feel like people over here hate to share their master recording royalties. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
producers struggle to get their points over here.
yep,
Well,
But
that,
yeah, on the
that's that
definitely.
publishing
that's
side, hmm
oh that's one question I wanted to ask you in terms of the two different copyrights, right? Because for example, I don't know if you've heard Russ, but he's very vocal on the business of music in a lot of podcasts, and he's been on a few podcasts recently. And one he went on, he was saying that you earn way more on your masters than you do through publishing. People focus a lot on the publishing, right, whereas they should focus more on the masters. Why is that? How is it possible, or why is it that masters earns more than the other copyright?
Why goes to the history. I mean, it's not arbitrary, but like Spotify decided that 80% of the income is going to go to the master recording owners and 20% is going to go to the publishing owners. So
Hmm.
that's just kind of how like publishers at one point in history, earlier history, were the ones making the most amount of money. Then when CDs and like physical sales started happening, the master, you're really monetizing the master. Like then labels started making a lot more. Then Spotify came along and hurt both business models to some extent, but also propelled them. And now they just decided that 80% from streaming specifically goes to the master and 20% goes to the publishing owners. Now with syncs, if you get a sync or if somebody samples your music, a lot of times it's split equally. Like if I don't know if you guys have gotten syncs, but like if Nike reaches out saying, "Yo, we want to use this song for a sync," we're proposing $15,000 per side. That means 15,000 goes to the master and 15 goes to the publishing owners. So, it's just nowadays with streaming. Like I said, in terms to answer your first question, that's just how they decided to split it. Now, with that being
Got
said,
you.
that's meaningful as an artist, and you should think about that as an artist. As a producer, it's like as a producer, you're getting with a major label placement, you're usually getting 50% publishing, so it's split if there's multiple producers. But you're only getting 3% on the master. So even though 80% of income is going to the master, like as a producer, you have way more publishing than you do on the master. Now, that being
Yeah.
said, 1% on the master, an extra 1% on the master is worth a lot more than an extra 1% on publishing. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, there's a lot I could talk about with master royalties. We probably have a more educated perspective than anybody in the space. So I'm happy to go into that further. If did I answer your question though? Did I miss anything,
Yeah,
Ocean?
definitely, definitely. So just a quick question following up on that. Spotify came and decided to give 80%, just split it up basically. So, oh man, I lost my question.
Yeah, 10% goes to mechanical royalties, 10% goes to performance royalties, which are both publishing royalties, and the other 80% goes to
Oh,
mass.
that's
Yeah,
so you know when people say you get roughly about $4,000 per million streams in the US, right, from Spotify. When they say that, is are we talking about publishing here, or is this like publishing and the masters within this 4,000?
that's publishing and the masters. There's a lot of different numbers floating around, but BeatStars Publishing promotes, and that's the number that I feel the most comfortable promoting. That $1,000 goes to publishing owners for every time for 100% of the composition. So with that number, that makes sense that $4,000 would go to the total song. But
Got
maybe
you.
4,000 goes, yeah. So it's somewhere around there. But of course, it depends on the platform and where the streams are coming from and whether people have a family plan or, what kind of streams they come from. But yeah,
It feels like it's just built to hook the labels up, really, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
like labels own the master recording, right? So when Spotify is collecting like the money that these songs are generating, it's like the big portion goes to the labels essentially, right? It just feels like it's built up that way to kind of hook up the labels and not hook up the other guys.
yeah, yeah. I mean, with that being said, have you guys heard of the Music Modernization Act in the United States? Which I forget what year it was passed. Maybe it was 2017 or 2020 or something like that. But it was like the biggest music-related copyright act the last 2 decades, probably three
Mm.
decades. And one of the things that it said was that Spotify has to fund the MLC. So the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective in the United States, is the organization that was founded for two specific things: to collect and pay out royalties related from streaming. Because so they come from streams in the United States go through the MLC. You could collect them directly from the MLC. But also to help clean up the data issues because as a lot of you guys probably heard before, there's what's called the black box. So
Mm.
after around 3 years, publishing royalties go into the black box depending on the territory, and the MLC was created to help clean up the data so that way they were able to locate the royalty owners and pay them out appropriately. So in that sense,
Right.
Spotify did in some way kind of forcefully support publishers as well too.
Right, got you.
Yeah.
So for producers to understand, so if a producer's made a beat and it gets placed with an artist, they're entitled to some master recording royalties and obviously publishing. Is that always the case? Because I hear so many times that producers have really struggled to get a point on the master, especially in the UK. Maybe it's a bit different in the US. But like over here, for example, most people get their equal share of publishing. But then it's almost like you're offending an artist when you ask them to share their master recording royalties, whether
Yeah.
they're with a
Yeah.
label or if they're independent. It's like they really don't want to like touch that side, and it seems strange because really producers are entitled to it, right? I know there's no specific number that you like have to have. It's not like a legal thing, is it, that you deserve this number every time because everything's negotiable. But in your experience, like what is a producer entitled to on both sides, like publishing and master recording?
Yeah, so we talked about the publishing side, so I'll talk about the
Hmm.
master side. On the master side, if you're working with a major label artist, it's pretty simple. Usually, the producer gets 3% of the master, 3 points on the master.
Yeah.
If you're a bigger producer, maybe you get 4 points, 5 points. And if you're a smaller producer, they might try to offer you 2 points. If you say, I'm looking for the industry standard of 3 points, they'll probably give it to you. That's with
Hmm.
major label artists signed to major label deals. If they're signed to an indie distributor, then 3 points doesn't make nearly as much sense because they're getting a lot higher of a royalty.
Mm.
with their indie distributor. Says your 3 points comes out of the artist share. If the artist signs a major label deal, they might get 18 to 20%. So that comes out of that. If they're signed to Empire, they might get 80%, maybe 90%. So that 3 points doesn't make nearly as much sense. So you should aim for something higher. But that being said, it's still difficult, even for us sometimes, to get them to agree to higher with indie releases or indie distributor releases or anything like that. So what should a producer receive from indie releases? I'll say 15 to 25%. But if they're not getting any type of advance, then pushing as high as 50%. If your name's on the
Mm.
song, like as an artist, then you could push for a
Mm.
50% more obviously, because you're helping. I think ultimately, the more you're helping with the marketing push, the more you're helping with the success of the record, the better chances you have at getting a higher master royalty, or at least the better argument that you have for getting a higher master royalty. That's kind of how master royalty percentage is often deemed. But really, it's a free for all industry, and like you
Mm.
said, you can negotiate anything and get anything. But that's just my rough perspective on it. So.
Got you.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so if someone's getting 3% of the artist share, is that like, say an artist is getting 20% of the master recording, is that 3% of the 20%, or is that taking 3% from them, so they'd have 17% and then the producer would have 3%?
This is where it gets super complicated. So what I was talking about is what's called PPD, the PPD percentage. If you see on a major label producer agreement, it'll say you're getting 3% of the PPD, which essentially is like the calculation that the labels use to calculate royalties. And it's basically like a gross number. If the song generates $100, then you get 3% of that total $100. Way more complicated than that, but
Right.
that's one way to look at it. So the
Mm-hmm.
producer is getting a percentage of the total amount that the producer you got in that situation. Either way, if the producer gets 3%, it comes out of the artist's percentage. So
Right.
like if they had artists had 18% PPD, now they're getting 15% PPD. Um,
Right.
because the producer got 3% PPD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now, if the in the UK, you have a lot of independent distribution companies, and most of them are not calculating on a on a PPD basis. You're calculating on a net receipts basis. So if your producer agreement says 3% net receipts, that means that you're getting 3% of whatever. Most likely, it depends how net receipts is defined. You're getting 3% of what the artist is receiving after
Mm.
the label takes their percentage. So you have to kind of be on the lookout for that
Yeah.
language, net receipts versus PPD. If it's net receipts, you're probably going to see, you should aim for something closer to 15 to 25%, if
Right.
it's net receipts. So
Got you.
That's good
yeah,
Yeah.
it
to
gets
know. Yeah.
complicated. It takes a lot to, I don't still don't fully understand it. I mean, but
Yeah.
it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
So what would you say is, from dealing from experience from all of your cases, what is like the most common mistakes that producers make when it comes to getting paid from their music?
The most common mistake is just not following up. Like the music industry moves super slow, and it is the like it takes a lot of follow-ups to make things get done. People don't just do things like on the first email usually. Especially lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers are the reason why most things get held up. So you got to follow up them constantly. Ideally, they know who you are, because then you'll be able to get things done a lot quicker, because they know, like when producer royalty reaches out, they know they're going to get the same email once every 2 days for the next, until they get it done. It's going to constantly get more aggressive, and we're going to take the song down if you don't answer us after a certain amount of time. But if you're an independent producer, still the same thing applies. Follow up every 2 to 4 days, business days, until they actually do whatever you're requesting to do. I would, to build on that, it's like not knowing what to do when. Like I like to use the phrase, the way to get things done is to come correct. And what I mean by that is giving them what they need before they even have to ask you for that. So when they reach out to you proposing, hey, we're looking to clear this record. We're proposing these terms: a $1,000 advance, 3 points, 50% publishing. And you'll be like, okay, agreed. Here is my contracting information. Like, you know that they're going to ask for contracting information, which is the information to include on the contract. That makes their job easier. And then they're able to get that done much quicker without, if they reach out asking for the contracting information, you know, you're like, I don't know what contracting information is. You're asking them to write you a whole response. Same thing goes with the payment
Mm.
process. As soon as you sign the agreement, send back the agreement and say, please loop me in with whoever will be handling this payment. And then that person will get looped in. and then you send them your invoice and your W-9. If you're not signed up with a label vendor, every time you get a placement with a major label, you need to sign up as a vendor with that label, or at least the three main labels, and then other labels as well too, like Empire and Create, etc. They have their own vendor systems, and just knowing what comes next really helps you. So that's actually
Hmm.
why we made a course. I made a course called the Placement Playbook, which goes through all 7 steps of the placement process and teaches you how to negotiate the best terms and review your contract, what to say when, et cetera, et cetera. So soft plug for our course, the Placement Playbook. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll definitely
just
leave a
knowing
link
what
to
to come
that.
next. Dope. Appreciate you.
Nice man.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's a big gap for a lot of producers, especially in like the hip hop realm. I think there's a lot of advice, but there's not stuff like specific to like the lane we're in. Yeah, I was gonna ask actually. So like in the UK, I don't know what it's like in America and other regions, but sometimes it happens like where a fairly big artist would release a song and you wouldn't get an advance, you wouldn't get contacted, you wouldn't get anything prior. They just release the song, and I guess it's kind of down to you. So like, have you ever worked with producers that have been in that situation where they've had a big song release with zero contact being made, and then had to then follow up and try and figure out the payment terms and advances and whatnot?
Yeah, probably more than anybody. At least in the last year, we
Yeah.
probably dealt with that more than anybody. My main vision for producer royalty when I started was helping with specifically that, because I noticed that a lot of lawyers were charging like huge upfront retainers, and like the producers didn't have the money. So we're like, I'm just going to charge a percentage basis. If we get it cleared, then we take our percentage.
Mm.
If we don't get it cleared, then we take nothing. So that's how I started with producer royalty. So yeah, now we're doing that at the highest level, smallest level. I'm doing it with some of the biggest songs you can imagine. And yeah, I could go into explaining how we get those resolved typically if you want. Uh, yeah,
Let's
we
do it,
definitely deal
man.
with that.
'Cause I think there'll be people that have had placements, or maybe they've taken a beat from YouTube or whatever it is. They just all of a sudden they hear this song that's out, and it's like, what do I do? They don't know
Yeah.
where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first step is to figure out who to reach out to. If you've seen my content before, you probably see I have a clip that explains exactly what I'm about to say.
Mhm.
First step is to figure out who to reach out to, and that's most likely going to be their lawyer, their manager, maybe the A&R of the label. So you got to figure out who to reach out to in that situation. Well, how do you do that? I would suggest reaching out to all the producers that worked with that artist recently. So whether so you could go on their Genius page and see all the producers that were on the last album and reach out to a bunch of them. Be like, hey, I haven't gotten paid for this song. One, were you able to get paid for this song? And two, who did you speak with? And then,
Mhm.
you reach out to that person. So that's the first step, is to figure
Mhm.
out who do you reach out to. Second step is to just follow up with them, explain, hey, this is the situation. If you go on Producer Royalties page, it's a little far down. We actually have the exact email or an email template that we use sometimes, or just as a guide. Now we don't really use it because we have it memorized, but the main things to say. But you could go on Producer Royalties page, and there's an email template you can copy and paste and use and tailor to your own situation. And then send that, and then follow up every 2 to 4 days for 2 to 4 weeks. And if they don't answer, start ramping up the aggression and be like, hey, we are reaching out. We're trying to resolve this amicably, but we haven't been able to come to a resolution. And then if they don't answer, then you got one choice left. You got to threaten a song takedown. And you can just threaten the song takedown. And usually that gets them moving, maybe 50% of the time if you get to that stage. If they still don't answer you and they're still not resolving it, then you file a Spotify takedown specifically. You file it on Spotify because then you don't have to go through the trouble of removing it off all the DSPs. But also, when you file on Spotify, it sends the person a notification that the song is going to be taken down if they don't respond within 2 to 4 days or whatever the time frame is, and then they'll reach out to you at that point and try to get it cleared. And if they don't, then and they let the song come down, then that's it. Like the song's not worth money to them, so there's nothing you can do.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that happens in a small percentage of situations. I like to say that we have a lot more success when dealing with a smaller artist's biggest song than a bigger artist's smaller song, because that
Mhm.
song is worth more money to that person. So
Yeah.
just something to think about.
Got you.
Yeah, I guess that's like the gun to the head kind of last ditch resort to get things moving, I guess.
Yeah, and you could do that right away if that's what you want to do. That's not how we approach it. But in theory, they stole your intellectual property. So you go on Spotify's website, you look up DMCA takedown, It'll say file a legal report or something like that when you Google Spotify takedown, and then you just fill that out, and then you get the process moving. And you don't even have to find out who to reach out to or anything like that. So that's an option. That's something you can do.
So when you file
Yeah.
that takedown, Spotify reach out to the person who's distributed it first to say that someone's issued, and then do they have a certain amount of days to respond? Is it like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, similar to YouTube then, I guess.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
Same thing.
would you ever go directly to YouTube and do a takedown on the video, or would you always just use the Spotify platform?
We use Spotify, but you can do it on YouTube too. There's no reason you can't.
I've never actually done it on YouTube. I always wondered if you do it and then it gets resolved. I'm guessing the video just goes back up with the same amount of views, right? It's not like they have to re-upload it.
Pretty sure. Pretty sure.
Yeah,
We usually, I can't even think of a time we've taken the video down on YouTube. If it has, it's been my team, and then it hasn't gone back up. So,
right.
um,
But
yeah,
same with
when you
Spotify,
file it
it'll
on
just be
Spotify,
down temporarily, and then it
yeah,
doesn't affect the streaming numbers or anything like that.
yeah, because yeah, you could then if they reach out to you, you file it. They reach out, hey, I want to get this resolved. Sorry, we didn't pay you. You can then respond to Spotify and be like, I don't want this. I want to retract my claim. The artist reached out to get it cleared.
Yeah.
So
So
Right.
the song
it
doesn't
would be
even
on
come
you
down.
as the producer to then to make that. So it'd be on you to then tell Spotify to retract the takedown. They can't. The label
Yeah.
can't then. Yeah, they've retracted it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, if it's a big label or if it's a big artist and it's an artist that makes Spotify a lot of money or whatever it is, and sometimes it's harder to get those takedowns filed, and you need to provide more proof. So that's something to think
Right.
about too. But
Makes sense.
small fraction of artists.
One question I wanted to ask you is about publishing deals, because one thing that when I'm speaking with producers who mainly focus on getting placements, a lot of the times their goal is to sign the big publishing deal, and I guess that's like a big way to monetize their music. But would you be able to break down why a producer would want a publishing deal, and also roughly, I guess it's very case by case how much you could make from a publishing deal, but let's say you're just starting versus if you're a superstar producer, what publishing deals kind of look like?
For sure. So there's sometimes people say the word publishing deals to mean specifically co-pub deals. I want to sign a publishing deal. I want to sign a big co-pub deal, is what they're saying. So there's two main types of publishing deals. There's admin deals, there's co-pub deals. Admin deals take a smaller percentage and they don't take any ownership in your work, and they usually don't give in advance either, although they could. So BeatStars Publishing, that's entering. If you sign with BeatStars Publishing, you're signing a publishing deal. Like that is a publishing deal. If you sign with Songtrust, that's a type of publishing deal too. It's a single song assignment. You're giving them the rights to collect on one song at a time. BeatStars Publishing is the exclusive admin deal, so that locks you into a deal. Great company, but just a lot of producers don't know that that's a publishing deal. So that's the first thing I'll say. On top of that, things to think about when you sign a publishing deal is the first publishing deal you enter. Whenever you enter any type of publishing deal, it'll restrict your capacity to get a bigger deal after that, because it might be a 1-year admin deal, 2-year admin deal, but there's what's called a retention period after that. Almost every publishing deal has a retention period, and a retention period is how long they keep collecting on the songs that were released during the term of the deal after the deal ends. So if I sign the deal today, I release the song tomorrow, and then the deal ends a year from now, I cancel the deal at the day that it ends, then they'll keep collecting on the song that just dropped, that drops tomorrow, I guess in my example, for another however long the retention period is, which means that if you get a hit during that time, then the next publisher can't collect on it for a period of time, like for a while, maybe after the majority of the money is collected on. If you sign a co-pub
Right.
deal, most of the time those retention periods are 10 to 15 years, 5 to 15 years. So like basically the next publisher isn't going to have any time to collect on that music, or it's not even going to be worth it for them to give you all this money now for a song they can't collect on for a long ass time. So the moment a producer signs a co-pub deal, we see it all the time. Deal with it all the time. We're working with a lot of huge producers and trying to help them with the publishing situation. But they signed a huge co-pub deal. They got a couple 6 figures, and now they had some hits, billions and billions of streams. But it's like they can't get another publishing deal. The new publishers don't want to work with them just off of these hits. because they're in a retention period with the co-pub deal. So their only option to get a new co-pub deal, to get another big advance, is to terminate their co-pub deal now if they are recouped, because a lot of times they're not recouped and they can't terminate yet, and then build a whole new catalog because with songs that aren't trapped into that deal. So
Wow.
That's
yeah, I
crazy.
know that's a lot of context, and it's like producers don't realize signing a publishing deal every time is a big deal. Whether it's BeatStars Publishing, whether Song Trust too, but Song Trust is shitty. I wouldn't recommend signing with Song Trust
I was gonna
or any
ask
other
because I'm with
small.
Song Trust, so I was gonna ask like
Well,
if they are any
sorry.
good because I know a lot of people like do recommend them. Like I only join them based off like content that other producers were putting out and recommending them. But yeah, maybe quickly explain why Song Trust isn't that great.
I will say this: Songtrust has the business model of getting as much writers as possible onto their platform and getting a shit ton of market share, and
Mm,
then having the rights to collect on a shit ton of songs. When you have millions and millions of works, it takes a lot to register the rights to all of these works. They're not doing
yeah.
it. They don't do it. Now, I interviewed Jeremy Miller on our podcast. He produced Rolex by Ayo and Teo. That song has billions of
Mm,
streams and used by a bunch of, like, they generated so much money in publishing. As soon as that song got released, he talked about on the platform how all Songtrust, he was with Songtrust. They sent him a representative. They sent him an A&R. They were
mm,
making sure his songs are all registered properly because there's a
right.
lot of money to collect
Yeah.
from that specific song. Of course, they're going to maximize the amount of money they could collect. But if you have songs that are not big, like this is not just Songtrust. This is all publishers that we've worked with, even the huge ones, biggest names. Like they focus on the top 20% of their clients because that's where 80 to 90% of their money comes from. So when you're with
Yeah.
Songtrust, I mean, yeah, I think that guys like you guys who are not the top tier, but like you're probably top 1% of Songtrust people, if not the top 0.1%. They might focus on your catalogs and you might be good. But at the same time, if you're a small producer who don't have, really, you have like 2 million streams to collect on, like the amount of publishing you're owed is like, I don't know, $1,000, like maybe. So it's like you're going to enter a deal with Songtrust, or maybe to collect it here. And like I said, they're going to have a retention period to these songs. So a lot of times it just there's a sweet spot for publishing, and it's a lot to think about. And making the decision on when to sign is a big thing, and that's part of the reason
Right.
why we have a whole kind of publishing division and we do publishing consultations because it's like it's a big decision to make when a producer has a couple decent sized records.
So
Yeah. I
when
was
would
gonna
you
say.
say is the right time, if there is
Mm,
a right time to sign a publishing deal? And also, just adding to that, aside from the big bag that you might get from a publishing deal, is there any reason why you should sign a pub deal?
Two reasons to sign a co-publishing deal. Because a co-publishing deal, you're giving up a higher percentage. Two reasons from my perspective. One, they're giving you a big advance. Two, they're giving you some type of opportunities. They're going to get you in writers' rooms. They're going to connect you with the right people. They're going to expand your career in some capacity. That being said, publishers that are signing you to co-publishing deals will make all these promises. We see it all the time. Like these publishers get on the phone, oh, we love this. We're going to get you in the room with X, Y, and Z. We're going to send your music out to all these people. You're going to be huge, blah, 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 blah. That's how they get you to sign. Like, and again, the same way it goes to collecting your royalties, the same thing goes for giving opportunities. Like they give their opportunities to the top guys. So if you're
Yeah,
working with a small boutique publisher that you're their top guy, then they're probably going to give you their opportunities. If you're signing to somebody like Sony ATV, great publisher, but they have the biggest writers in the world. If you're just, you got a couple million streams, and you're kind of not standing out in any way, they're probably not going to give you the opportunities. So those are the two reasons to sign a co-publishing deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any
yeah.
questions on
So
that?
so when would it be the right time to sign then, or who would be the right person to sign a pub deal?
Well, the ideal situation in terms of like making the most money, if you want to make the most money in your career, is to just sign an admin deal for as low a percentage as possible with a publisher that's able to that is competent and actually going to do their job.
Hmm.
And you're top of mind for them, and they make sure they're registering your music properly. That's how you're going to make the best time to sign a co-publishing deal. I mean, everybody's in a different situation. Like for some people, being able to get a $50,000 now, $100,000 now is what will allow you to be full time in music, and that will make it the best decision for you is to whatever will allow you to be full time in music and to take that leap. Because without that money, they can't focus on being a producer 100% of the time. So if you
Yeah.
don't need the money, if you are able to save, then the best time to sign a co-publishing deal is probably never, but also not
Mm.
necessarily, because a lot of publishers lose money on, we see it all the time, like they give you $1 million and your catalog only generated $500,000, so they lost a shit ton of money. So the best time to sign one was like, we signed I can't say the name, but like a huge viral song 6 months ago, and it was just starting to go super viral. And we got a single song publishing deal. All the publishers wanted to sign it. They offered him like the biggest deal they got offered was like $60,000 for this song that's going viral, and it was very viral. And then it just kind of plateaued, and now it's
Mm.
whatever. It's got like 25 million streams, and the publisher probably lost money on that song. So
Mhm.
we got them the deal probably at the best time to get the deal, because yeah, so in that situation, so it's just so case by case, and I wish I had a more concrete answer, but I will
Mhm.
say the best financial decision is to not take out the loan, is to just save money and not live off the loan.
Yeah,
So
because can you, like, if you didn't take that, because it feels like with a pub deal, you kind of taking that money up front just to have the money there, but then is that money you would have just collected like over a longer period anyway? So is it literally just like if you need that money in that moment, then
Yeah.
that could help your career, then it's beneficial, but if not, you're gonna collect that over time anyway. Like how do producers collect
ideally.
it without a pub deal?
Well, everybody knows BMI ASCAP. You guys got PRS. Those
Yeah.
collect performance royalties. And there's what's called reciprocal agreements. So BMI and ASCAP share royalties with PRS and a lot of the other PROs around the world. So you don't have to register directly with each of them. Although if you do register directly with each of them, then that will increase the likelihood that you'll get as much money as possible in your pocket. But then there's also mechanical collection societies as well too, which I was talking about the MLC before.
Hmm.
I mentioned before, 10% of streaming income goes to performance royalties and 10% goes to mechanical royalties. So if you're only getting from BMI or ASCAP, then you're only getting probably less than half, because there's also the writer share and the publisher share, and a lot of producers are not collecting both the writer share and the publisher share. So another conversation. And you're probably you're not collecting from all the PROs around the world. Um, and mechanicals, the Mechanical Licensing Collective only collects from streams in the United States. You could register for free. They don't have any charge. You can register directly with them and register your songs with them, but they only collect from streams in the United States. And they don't have reciprocal agreements with the other mechanical collection societies around the world. Every territory has their own laws and regulations around publishers, and the publisher's job is to be an expert at that process and handle those registrations for you. If you want to be independent and self-publish, it means that you're going to register yourself with these collection societies yourself, which you definitely can do. I mean, it's not emphasized enough that it's something that you can do, especially if your song, 95% of your streams are coming from the United States. Well, there's not that many organizations to sign up with. You register with BMI ASCAP and the Mechanical Licensing Collective, you're getting most of your money. It's not worth, in theory, giving a percentage to a publisher if you're able to collect those most of that on your own. But it's a whole job and responsibility that I wouldn't necessarily recommend producers do, because statistically most producers aren't going to do a good job doing it.
Yeah, I feel like most like pub admin companies kind of market themselves that way. They kind of make it sound like you wouldn't be able to collect it because there's so many different agencies to collect from, and that's why they're beneficial because it's sort of in one place. Do you think that is the case? Because like even registering your song on like 5 different platforms can be kind of long for people. Like you said, are people going to do that after getting multiple placements? A lot of them won't, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think publishers definitely oversell it, and it wasn't until even when I started producer royalty, it's like I didn't do that much work with publishing, so I was saying things like honestly I was giving out some information that wasn't fully aligned. I would say I
Mm.
was sold by the publishers and what I see online that publishers have systems that are automatic. You put in your song in the portal, and they have this system that automatically registers you with all these societies. That's not the case
Mm.
at all. They have to manually register
Oh,
with all
really?
these collection
I
societies
didn't
around
know
the
that.
world. Yeah. So it's like it's a lot of work, and what you're asking, if you have small songs and your song has 1 million streams, and you have 10% publishing on it, there might be $300 to collect, and they're paying somebody $25 an hour, and it's going to take all this time to register with a
Mm.
society that it generated $2 with in Zimbabwe. They're not going to do it like they're so and so it's definitely challenging to register stuff on your own. But in theory, you can just look on a platform like Chartmetric or Luminate and see where your streams are happening. If you see you're viral in this country, you can register your songs with the PRO or the whatever society in that country and collect that money yourself. Although there are registration fees for most societies, so like with BMI ASCAP, I think BMI it might be $150 to register or something like that. So like you can't, you might only have $150 to collect. Is it worth going through the process? So,
Paying,
you
yeah,
know, there's
paying
things
that
like
to
that to
them.
consider.
So what do you think
Yeah.
Yeah.
someone should do if they have like a few placements out there, maybe a couple million streams like here and there, and not no hits, but still an all right amount? Like, what would be the best practice for them? Should they go with a pub admin, or should they just sign up to like PRS and and obviously collect your mechanicals and just do it the longer way of signing up to different agencies?
If you are an entrepreneurial producer and you see yourself being somebody that wants to take full ownership of every step of your process and understand the nitty gritty of each role and responsibility surrounding your business, then maybe do that for a period of years, a period of time. Just register your own music and handle it yourself. Until you get to a point where it's so massive that, and you have the bandwidth and the team, the leverage to get a better deal, and to have that role taken from you. If you're not like most producers, they're not interested in that type of role. It's better to delegate to a team that is passionate about it, that understands it, that's able to resolve split
Hmm.
disputes for you, and that are going to be responsive to emails and understand how this works. Because I've seen how producers dealing with the business side and trying to handle things on their own without a team really discourages them and it affects their creative process. So there's no
Hmm.
shame if that's a type of producer you are, but you just got to be self-aware enough to understand. I think it's at a certain point you're gonna have a team. Period.
Yeah.
So, but you're more capable to be the CEO of your company if you understand what it looks like to be successful in collecting music publishing royalties.
Right. Got you.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's kind of a good thing. Maybe like even just initially for most producers to just see what the process looks like and what they should be, what the steps are to them. Yeah, so then they can kind of pass it off to a team member, they kind of know what the process looks like, regardless. But yeah, I can see how
Yep.
it can affect the creative process. Uh, I think you kind of got to love both sides of it, right? We talk about this a lot with like the YouTube side of things and making content. Like it's not just making beats and posting them. It's the filming of it, the editing it, and you've got to kind of fall in love with that side of it. And whatever business you build off the back of it, you're gonna have to be passionate about that as well as making music. So yeah, I can definitely see how having both sides is super important with it.
100%.
Entirely. Yep. Well, that's a good comparison.
One
Yeah.
another thing I wanted to ask, because I do see sometimes this narrative being pushed online is that there's no there's no money in music for producers. And specifically, I was watching a TikTok of somewhat of a successful producer. He was explaining his situation of a song that got, let's say, a couple 100 million streams, and him not getting paid what he considered to be much. So I wanted to just see if we could break down, yeah. If a producer produces a hit song, let's say 1 billion streams, right? On just the most basic terms, normal terms, like let's say 3 points on the master, 50% of the publishing, they did it all themselves. What kind of numbers are we talking about here that they could potentially earn?
You asked me at the perfect time because the video I was scripting today. Guess what the title is? It's
What
how
does a
much money
million
do
streams
producers
get
make
you?
really make from placements?
Alright.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually just did some of that math last night. So you asked me at a good time.
Perfect.
Sick.
But
Nice.
yeah, so I'm going to use the example 100 million streams, and I'm going to say 100 million streams on Spotify. Apple Music streams aren't really, they're not accessible. You can't know what they are. So I'm going to assume, we've done the number. Whenever we do gauges, we use 100 million streams on Spotify as a reference. So at any point during this episode, I say X amount of streams. I'm referring to streams on Spotify,
Mhm.
but that also means you can assume that it got roughly the same on Apple Music, or maybe 75% of them, and YouTube, it did what it did. So I'll give you the numbers that we use for 100 million streams. On the publishing side, let's say you have 50% publishing on the song. Wait, let me. Wow, my freaking script is right in front of me. I didn't even have to open it.
Perfect
Perfect.
timing.
Yeah, we'll start with the master side. So on the master side, a typical advance for a C-list artist, maybe like a Lil Tyler or a Baby Tron or a YTB Fat, might be like $1,000 to $3,000 as an all-in fee, meaning that's what's split between all the producers. Then like B-level artists, you might get $2,500 to $10,000 if it's like an NBA young boy, Lil TJ, or like a Key Glock. And if it's like an A-level artist, you might get 10,000 to 20,000 if it's like a Drake, Kendrick, or a Travis Scott, as an advance. So that's what you're getting as an advance. Now that
Hmm.
advance is a prepayment of master royalties, meaning that it has to recoup before you get more master royalties. And but that being said, if a song has 100 million streams on Spotify and the producer has 1 point on the master, but typically they have 3 points. But this is the easy way to understand it. If they have 1 point on the master and the song has 100 million streams on Spotify, that means they're usually owed about $10,000 in master royalties. So that's how we do the calculation. When we're doing like an audit, they haven't collected this
Mm.
royalty. If the song has 200 million streams and they have 3 points on the master, that means they'll have about $60,000 in master royalties to collect after their advance. They receive their advance and after their advance. So
Hmm.
that's roughly it. So if the song has 100 million streams, they have 3 points on the master, meaning they produced it by themselves. It's hardly any producers nowadays. Then they might make a $10,000 advance and then $30,000 in master royalties.
Is that
So
after
Okay.
they've recouped,
$40,000.
or is that
Yeah.
including like
Yes,
recouping the
that's
10K?
how much they'll make on the master side at about 100 million streams. It'll be about $40,000 on the
Okay,
master side. Ten
right.
thousand
And
dollar
then
advance plus they're probably owed 30,000 in master royalties.
Mm. Okay.
and then on the
So
royalty side, it will be a bit less.
Like the
um,
publishing side.
that is
Publishing.
I
yeah on
mean,
the
sorry,
publishing
the
side.
publishing side. Yeah.
Yeah, on the publishing side, it'll probably need more. The thing to consider with publishing is with publishing, it's generated from a lot more than just streams. For the most part, the master side is generated mostly from like streams and maybe like a couple syncs, but it's not going to be much because you have a small percentage
So like album
in
sales as well,
syncs.
if you've sold on iTunes and things like that.
Yeah, but that's a small fraction. But yes, it
Yeah.
would be included in that too. On the publishing side, if your music is played, if it performed by the artist in Madison Square Garden, you're going to generate a lot of money from that, from the public performance. If it's played on the radio a lot, you're going to generate a lot in that from it
Mm.
being played on the radio a lot. There's a lot of other ways it's played in restaurants or it's on a major playlist in restaurants for some reason. Like you're going to generate a lot more on the publishing side, so it's a bit more unpredictable. But to put some numbers on it, like we were saying before, about $1,000 gets generated from a million streams for 100% of the publishing. So if you
Hmm.
own 100%, producers have typically 50%. So that means they'll get $500 per million streams, which equals about $50,000 in. Wait, did I do that math right? Yeah, so they'll get about $50,000 in publishing from that.
Mm.
Got you.
Got
Okay.
you.
But
Yeah.
that's just the streams. Now, if it was put on the radio a lot, if it has 100 million streams, then it's probably in the radio a little bit. And if it's performed a lot, it's probably one of the better songs for the artist. Then it'll generate a lot more too. So
It's
they're
something
they're,
at
they're
100
probably going to
mil.
make a lot more in publishing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then it could something at 100 million streams could easily lead to sync placements and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to make much from syncs, probably like couple like two. I can't say, but how much they pay is not it's
Yeah.
not a lot. It's
Yeah.
low
Right.
five figures. And like the
Okay.
producer, if you only have 3% on the master, then that comes out 3% of $1,500 is like nothing.
Yeah. It's
You
not
know what I
much.
mean?
And
That's
So
is that
interesting
3%
because
usually
I
split
always used
between
to
the
think.
producer? Oh, sorry. Go on, Ocean.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry, bro. I was just gonna say I always used to think that sync placements you would get a lot. I thought it was like six figures for, I don't know,
A
let's
Nike
say,
placement or something.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Nike
like
placement or
NBA
something
or
like
something.
that, or it being used in a movie.
yeah, it definitely could be. But the chances are relatively slim. I think it's a more easy business or like a more predictable business model to be a producer that chases sync placements than major label placements. I think it's more likely that you'll get those consistently and be able to make a career around it. But if you made a random record that does relatively well, like the money you'll make from syncs is the chances it's higher than 10,000 will probably be pretty small, even if it has 100 million on
Yeah.
Spotify.
Mm,
Right.
Yeah, I guess like most of these
It could happen.
bigger,
It's just unpredictable.
Hmm.
yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say like with these big films and like TV shows, I guess they kind of have their own libraries specifically for sync. Like they're not looking for like a record that already exists. You know, if that makes sense. They're not looking for like an NBA YoungBoy song to use in sync. If that make, you know what I mean? Is that kind of the case, or they're looking for they've got like their own sync stuff they
I
look
work
for?
in the sync space very minimally, but it goes both ways, I would say.
Yeah.
It's companies like 2K that try to use like most viral songs or ones that are known in like urban culture, but like most movies aren't really using songs in urban culture like that
Yeah.
too much. Uh,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask before, so just so producers know, if you get in like 3% as the industry standard on the master, if it's with a label, if there's multiple producers, is that split between multiple producers? They're not getting 3% each, right? It's just like 3% is going to producers and they split it amongst themselves.
yeah, Yeah, and that's why like when the artist reaches out to propose terms, they usually be like they'll reach out to the producer that made the play, be like, "Hey, we're proposing a $2,000 advance, 3 points, and 50% publishing all in." And then that's essentially them saying like, "Hey, this is what we're offering all the producers on here, and you guys figure out how you want to split it."
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
what's interesting about negotiating the points versus the advance is like the point, like if you're a producer if the guy who made the play agreed to a $5,000 all-in fee, and you're not happy with 2,500, you're the second producer. This guy gets 2,500, you get 2,500. You could negotiate your own advance to be higher than the other producers, and that's kind of fine. But it's like because they have, in theory, an infinite amount that they could give you, but on the master royalty side, it's like there's only a limited amount they can give you. Like obviously, they're not going to
Hmm.
give you 50% of the song. So it's like it's a different type of negotiation for sure.
Got you.
Yeah.
And then just
Same
to
When
thing with
quickly
publishing.
run back to like getting paid as a producer. So let's say you've worked out the terms, the splits and everything. What's the next step? Say you're not with you haven't got a publishing deal, you're not with a pub admin. What are the places you need to sign up to? Like in the UK, obviously the main one is like the PRS for your publishing, that's connected to the MCPS. We also have the PPL, which I believe is for mechanicals, and in the US you have Sound Exchange. I think that's right. But so,
hmm
as a producer, what do they need to sign up to collect their money?
Well, the main thing to know is like if you look up that BeatStars publishing, look up BeatStars publishing chart,
Yeah.
like it will show you the main revenue streams that are from um uh the song that'll be generated on the master side. Doesn't say advanced, but you obviously have to collect the advance. Then there's going to be digital performance royalties, which are what Sound Exchange collects in the US, and they have also kind of reciprocal agreements, so they work with other collection societies. And what they collect from is from internet radio like Pandora, Sirius XM, and things like
Hmm.
that. There's usually not much money in Sound Exchange at all, but I think it
Right.
is a good habit to get your songs registered with Sound Exchange. So you could get Sound Exchange. Um, then, if you want to collect your publishing royalties, then you could got to collect your mechanical royalties, which will be with the MLC. They'll collect from the streams in the United States. If you want to get from digital downloads to physical sales from the United States, then you have to go with the Harry Fox agency, but there's most likely not much money there. I'm waiting for you. And then if you have a song that's big in another country, then you should figure out how to register yourself to collect your mechanicals in each of those companies, each of those countries as well too. The same
Right.
thing goes with performance royalties. If you're with BMI and ASCAP or PRS, then they have, like I was saying before, reciprocal agreements. So that'll collect a large chunk of your or most of your performance royalties.
Hmm.
But yeah, so those are the main ones for the most part. And then
Got
there's
you.
other things too, like YouTube collections, like from Content ID and stuff that like is a whole world that is complicated. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
ideally, your publisher knows how to deal with it.
Got you.
Yeah.
One other
Do
thing
you
that I was thinking,
find?
go
Go
on,
on,
I
Jay.
was
Go
just
on.
gonna say, so one
Yeah.
thing that I know producers will be like thinking about is, let's say they're leasing beats online. Someone either buys a lease or even exclusive. How would that? How would it be different for them to like collect, or what are they entitled to? So, if for example I lease a beat online, someone just buys a premium lease, it's like $50. am I still entitled to publishing and master recording royalties on the song that's gone out? And also, if I sell the exclusive, does that change at all?
Um, I will say that every time a producer licenses a beat to an artist, they should look to get some type of upfront fee as if possible, whether it's exclusive or non-exclusive. You should try to get
Hmm.
some type of upfront fee if possible. You should get some type of master royalty. And you should get publishing on it. Try to get 50% publishing on it. Um,
Hmm.
every time, whether it's an exclusive or it's a non-exclusive. Now that being
Right.
said, if you license a beat on BeatStars, they don't put a master royalty percentage in their contract for producers. I really
Yeah.
don't understand why. It's probably my
Hmm.
biggest question, and I don't
Yeah.
understand why at all. But I always recommend if you are selling beats on BeatStars, to add into your contract that you get a master royalty percentage from any beat licenses used on
Hmm.
BeatStars. Um, so definitely
Got you.
recommend doing that. Now, yeah, the fact that it's exclusive or not exclusive shouldn't impact the fact that you get those other three. Now, that being said, it's all negotiable. If the artist is small, they don't have a budget at all, you just want to work with them, and of course, you could reduce the others or improve your master royalty and take nothing up front. But it shouldn't impact what you get. I know that's a big topic of confusion. I know like a lot. That's what I thought when I was first getting started too. The artist I manage, we bought an exclusive beat, and the guy was still asking for royalties. They're like, "What? Doesn't exclusive mean that you don't? I don't have to give you any royalties? Isn't that the whole
Yeah.
point?" So like, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's not how it works.
Got you.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a good point to
So
make.
do you find that the business varies from genre to genre? Because I know we're saying typically producers get 1 to 3% and 50% on the other side, but is that standard practice in music, or is it standard practice, for example, in like just pop and hip hop, and in other genres is slightly different?
Slightly different. There's what's called a country split, which is like everybody who's a writer on the song gets like an equal share of it. And that's what I was kind of referencing before when I was asking about the UK. I heard that a lot of more times in the US, you guys do a split that's like all the writers get equal percentages on the master. It definitely depends on the genre on the master side too. It's like in reggaeton music in Spanish markets, like it's very uncommon or a lot more uncommon or a lot more common for producers to not get a master royalty on the song. Also, like you were referencing before in the UK, it's kind of uncommon, but it seems like yeah. So it depends on the market to some extent. When I'm talking about standards, I'm referring to the U.S. market, but either
Hmm.
way, I mean, I'm certainly pushing for 50%. If we're working with a market in a like Australian market, we were pushing for there was one producer and three songwriters, and we were pushing for an American split. We referenced like we're shooting for the split that we typically do in our country because we're American producers. You use an American beat, so we're looking for that type of a split. So it helps to have an understanding of how different markets operate, but um,
Hmm.
yeah, really depends.
Yeah,
95% of what we do is U.S. hip hop though, so my experience is limited.
got you.
Okay.
Got you.
Yeah. And
Nice.
what about the advanced side of things as well? Like, um, if it was like a smaller producer who's like their first big hit, would you have less leverage on the advance if it was someone like like us, or like some like a higher producer with bigger numbers, bigger catalog? Like, is that harder if you're
Definitely.
taking yeah, if you're taking care of it? Is that more of like a harder thing to negotiate?
Yeah, we cleared up a record that was never paid out for a song with Tay Keith, and it was the producer's first placement, and he was the only co-producer on it. And the we were able to get a $15,000 advance. They actually proposed a $15,000 advance because the co-producer was Tay Keith. If he was the only producer on it, if the song had like 2 million streams, he would have not gotten close to that. He would have gotten like
Mm-hmm.
a $5,000 advance if we were lucky.
Yeah.
So it definitely impacts how much you get as a producer, what your catalog is, especially if you're somebody like Take Keith, where like you're adding a shit ton of value, the
Yeah.
marketing side.
And
Got
how
you.
Okay.
common is it to get an advance that's unrecoupable, that's not recoupable, so just a payment up front? Does that still happen these days, or?
Well, the thing is, it's kind of a misnomer by saying it's non-recoupable because, well, first let me say this. Okay, let me explain what recoupable. Yeah, for it to be non-recoupable means that it doesn't need to be recouped before you get master royalties. However, the song or album expenses still need to recoup before you get master royalties. Like the producer
Hmm.
almost never starts getting paid royalties until the artist is owed some royalties, meaning that the song or album expenses, the marketing costs, the recording costs, whatever went into it, have to be recouped before the producer gets master royalties. So I will say that 75% of the time, we ask for 50% recoupable pretty much all the time, maybe more than that. That gets approved. So if you get a major label placement, you should look for 50%. You could look for 50% recoupable, and that'll most likely get approved. If you ask for 100% recoupable, what usually happens is that cost is treated as a recording cost. They'll change the contract to say that this advance we're giving you is a recording cost. So that recording cost still needs to be recouped. Now that being said, there's what's called record one royalties, and if you don't know what record one royalties are already, you're probably not going to understand it after I explain it because it took me years to. I finally started understanding it. You hear me all right? It says trying to connect. Okay, I think we're good. Uh, yeah, so I was
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
Yeah,
understand record.
yeah.
Yeah, it just cut out
Good.
a little bit.
Okay, bet. Record
Yep.
one royalties, how they work. Producers get record one royalties, which is essentially like if I got okay, let's say I got 100% non-recoupable advance, and the album after the song generates $10,000, I start getting my royalty of 10%. Let's say I have a 10% master royalty. When the song generates $11,000, I'll get 10% of the whole $11,000
Mm.
as
Okay.
record one
Yeah.
royalties. Like it's kind of like a bank account that starts building up and it gets released after it reaches that threshold. If it wasn't record one royalties, then you would only get a percentage off of the difference between $10,000 and the $11,000. So you get 10% of the extra 1,000. So hopefully that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's how the artist actually gets paid royalties. So producers actually have an advantage in that way. So yeah, even though your advance, if it's non-recoupable, will still be recoupable, it'll be you'll still get record one royalties, meaning that you'll still get the same amount as even if there were no recording costs, assuming that it did recoup the recording costs.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got you.
So
Sorry, I
do
know it's hard to explain.
so in that example, for producers, would it make sense to ask for an advance or ask for just recording costs?
Um, you would ask for it's always preferable to ask for my advance to be treated as non-recoupable. That's always going to be preferable.
Hmm.
And when it's treated as non-recoupable, they're just going to change the language to say uh, that this will be considered a recording cost. And when it's considered a recording cost, it's recouped at the artist rate rather than the producer's rate.
Hmm.
Meaning, if the artist like the advance is recouped when a producer gets an advance, it's recouped at their royalty. If they have a 3% royalty, every $100 the song makes, that advance gets recouped $3. When it's
Hmm.
treated
Hmm.
as a recording cost, I'm not answering your question. I'm kind of getting on a tangent. Sorry, but when it's treated as a recording cost, like if the artist rate is 16%, then every $100 the song makes, that expense is recouped $16. So,
Hmm.
um, but to answer your question more directly, it's kind of always preferable to get it treated as non-recoupable.
Okay.
Mm.
I think that's the
Yeah.
crazy thing that we don't know. We don't really know what the recording costs were, because if we're not getting paid until those costs have been recouped, for all we know, they could have said it was 20,000 to record this song, and then we're waiting for that 20K to get recouped before we get paid, right? Because like artists do it, and I'm sure like everyone does it to some extent. Like they'll say that it cost this much and they paid this much for studio time, even though they might have just recorded at home, right? So there's different things that they can say to the label to say they've spent this much to record and make the song, and then that's gonna get recouped. Am I right in saying that? Can artists do that?
Definitely, except it's going to be most likely the label that does it. In the case of um, a major label release, it's going to be the label saying that we spent all this money on costs because
Yeah.
they get to keep all the money. It's actually not in the artist benefit to have all these costs attributed to the account because the artist doesn't start getting money until those costs are recouped.
Oh,
And
sure.
they don't have record one royalties, so it actually comes out of their pocket
Mm.
more so. So Yeah, it wouldn't be the artist most likely. If it's an independent release, it might be the artist, but at the same time, like the likelihood that you're getting accounted to properly from an independent artist is almost like zero either way.
Be
There we
back.
go.
Good?
We're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be
Okay,
good
cool.
now.
All right, sorry about that. I don't
All
remember
good.
where we left off.
We were just talking about how the label could exaggerate the costs so that it takes longer to recoup. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think
and it
you
sucks for the
explained.
producer because they don't have transparency into the cost in the same way the artist does.
Yeah,
You can't audit the label in the same way that an artist can. So
right.
Yeah.
Just following up on that question, right? When we're talking about recouping expenses and stuff, so is it true that, let's say, in this example, the artist on their music has 20% and the label has 80%? All costs are recouped through that 20% of the artist and not through the whole entire thing.
yeah, it's wild.
God damn.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is nuts.
That is crazy.
I mean, it could depend on the deal, but for the most part,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I guess there's always this like stigma attached to labels because they own the masters, and obviously everyone wants to own their masters. But I do see it from the label side as well, because if they're paying these big advances, it's kind of a gamble for them too. Like if they sign someone, it's maybe a bit different these days because for the most part it seems like they signed someone who's already got traction, whereas like a while back they might have signed someone at the start and built them up.
Mm.
But if they're investing all this money up front in this artist, then obviously they have to try and recoup it somehow, and that's why they own the masters, right? Or 80% of it. So I get it. It's like it's not like they can just sign someone, pay them, and then let the artist keep 100% of the masters. So I know there's this like big stigma attached to the labels. It's like they're all evil and dark, and I'm sure they do shady shit. But on the flip side, I do kind of see that they have to make their money back somehow.
Yeah. For sure.
definitely there's a lot less money in music than like a lot of people try to make it seem.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like
The
I
last
guess
thing
it's
I'll
it's more
crazy.
maybe
of like
ask you
a
then, because I'm sure a lot of producers they might be like scared to negotiate with artists or even ask for things. So, in your opinion, would it be best to just reach out to someone like yourself? Because did you say you work on a percentage basis anyway? So, I think a lot of producers think, oh, if I hire a lawyer, I don't really have thousands in the bank like that to pay a retainer or anything or anything. But there are people out there who will work on a percentage basis, right? So, from your experience, is it just best for a producer who might be a bit nervous to negotiate like that? Just reach out to someone like yourself and just let someone like you handle it, so then they don't have to do it.
I mean, yeah, I'll say that. Like, we are definitely a resource for everybody and anybody that's on here. At the very least, we'll answer your question if we can't represent you ourselves because the case isn't really big enough for us to handle. But yeah, we work
Hmm.
off of a percentage basis through producer royalty. When the law firm is launched, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to
Hmm.
be offering things like just doing the red line for you. So if you want to, which is the actual negotiating the fine print of the contract, and that'll be a flat fee.
Yeah,
Yeah, like if you're looking for somebody to represent you through your placement, then definitely feel free to reach out to Producer Royalty. We only do a percentage basis, and we'll help you with whatever you're looking for on that side, or at least be able to point you in the right direction if for whatever reason we can't help you. So
yeah,
yeah, we're always available. If you don't have upfront money, then that's why we started the company. So
oh, yeah. Because it has to make sense for you as well. It's like if someone's listening and they've got a placement and it's got like 500 streams, like it's not going to make sense for you to start chasing things down because there's nothing to chase. So it's one of
yeah,
those
the threshold we
situations where
usually do is
that
like
makes
two
sense,
million. Yeah,
right?
yeah. If
Yeah,
it's major label, anything, but like if it's like less than 2 to 5 million, then it's usually not worth our time. And we might do it anyways. Then the amount of invoices we have that are like for like $1,000, $500, like we make like nothing off it. Like we have a pretty big team, but we're just doing that to help the community and plant seeds with the next generation. So um,
nice.
we do it depending on the situation.
Got you.
yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that producers might be asking watching this. I know everyone's always got constant questions, but I think we've definitely covered a lot.
Yeah.
The only other
Definitely.
thing I had in mind was we kind of spoke about the advances you'd get from artists that are signed to a label. What type of advances could you expect from indie artists, independent artists? Obviously, it depends
Uh,
on the size of the artist, but what should people typically be asking for?
Um, it's just so hard to say. Like, it could range everywhere. It could be I'd think that asking for more than $1,000 to $2,000 from an indie artist is just like it's unreasonable, and they're not going to have
Mhm.
that money in their pocket most likely. It's not like
Yeah.
with a major label where it's coming out of label's budget, and yes, that's being credited to the artist account. So yes, in some way the artist is paying it, but they're not coming out of their pocket and looking at their bank account get down a couple $1,000s. So
Mhm.
I would just say if you're working with an artist that's getting less than 1 million streams, like if they give you $1,000 advance, they're like barely gonna make that back. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if they do make it back at all, and so they're probably gonna lose money just on the producer fee, aside from all the
Right.
other expenses. So like if it's gonna get less than 100,000 streams, then charge maybe like $200, $300.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, focus on the relationship and finding the next artist that you can blow up with. So I'm not going
Yeah.
to say
Yeah.
the same stuff that most producers say, but I mean, I think it's good advice.
Gosh,
No,
yeah. I guess
definitely.
you can be smart about it and just kind of research the artist. Like if you find an independent artist and they've got like 10 million monthly listeners or something, then it's like, okay, maybe they've got a bit more money than an artist who's got like 50K monthly listeners. Like I think you just have to be realistic, right?
Yeah, you gotta let the
Yeah.
numbers kind of dictate your decision making process when it comes to, yeah, is it worth chasing in advance or just actually building with this person and,
Hmm.
yeah, trying to build something like long term with them.
Would you ever recommend
Exactly.
producers take a buyout? Because I know that can kind of creep up in contracts without people realizing it, where it's like I'm just buying out the song. It's almost like freelance work, and you kind of waiving your rights to any publishing or anything like that. Are there
I've
any
heard some countries
situation?
do this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
It's a
Mm.
lot more common
producer was telling
overseas.
me, yeah, a
Yeah,
producer was telling me in India that's all they do. There is
it's
no
buyouts.
publishing and stuff.
Just
Really?
buy it
Yep.
out. Yeah.
Is there ever a
Yep. That
situation
Bollywood shit.
where that's right? I'm sure there's there's a price for everything, but let's say I don't know, small producer just gets offered like $500, just want to give you this $500, but straight buyout. I guess
Yeah,
it
like you
depends
said,
on the
in
producer.
theory, there's a price for every there's like you said in theory there's a price that you can put on anything that'll make it make
Hmm.
sense. There's a number that will be more than you'll make total if you did have a royalty on the song. So you could think about what that number might be and do the math on what that number could be, and then maybe accept or deny that number. But realistically, if you just say that I don't want to release this unless I get my fair share on the publishing and fair share on the master, then you could or you probably could get that. So I would just say that
Right.
I would just stand on. I mean, you do have to when we are working with a market that very specifically has like with India. If they're clearing the record the right way, then we might go along with the industry standard. But like we're dealing with this situation. The client actually decided to handle it on his own, so we're not dealing with it anymore. But what
Hmm.
it's a song that's huge. It has like 100 million streams, and they never paid him for it. So now we're gonna ask for what we feel like he's entitled to, even though
Yeah.
because they didn't clear it the right way. But if the artist is clearing it the right way and there is an industry standard, then maybe you could go along with it a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess ideally it's beneficial to have some sort of equity in the song because you just never know what's going to happen with the song. You can't predict it, so it's one of those.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So what's new with producer royalty then? Like what's the next steps with the YouTube channel? Like where are you trying to take, the whole thing? I know obviously you wanted to start a law firm with it, but yeah, what's going on with you guys?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So, I just started doing the talk ahead videos, which I think that Jay saw. So I'm gonna be dropping
Yeah.
those weekly, where I'm just gonna be talking straight to the camera, similar to what I do on Instagram, where I just talk straight to the camera and drop game. The YouTube page thus far has only been podcasts. Now the YouTube channel is gonna have me just talking to the camera for 15 minutes on a specific topic. Everything we talked about, I'm gonna go more in depth on the YouTube channel
I
about
really
that.
like
So if
that
you
last
want,
one, by the way. That last one that you did. It was really good content, so I enjoyed it, man. That's what made me reach out to you.
oh, that's amazing. I love to hear that because it's hard justifying the expense to the team sometimes because it's expensive to shoot those shits and they're
Yeah.
getting like 350 views. But and I get asked to be on something like this. It's a blessing. But yeah, so doing that and I promise you it's going to be the most helpful page on the internet to learn about the business side of being a producer if it's not already. And
Yeah.
then yeah, launching the law firm too. So any type of legal needs that you have, contract reviews, negotiating, forming your business entity or anything like that. By the time this comes out, we'll have the law firm open. So
Nice.
that also is a
Nice.
thing too, and just expanding the team. So we have a lot of people on salary and payroll now, which is awesome, and excited to keep scaling. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the future a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds promising. I think that's a huge gap in the production space. Like tutorials, we got that down. We got all the production stuff that we need, but in terms of the business side of it, I think it's lacking huge. You know, there's some producers that talk on it, but it's not their main lane. It's not their main brand. But obviously they'll drop a few videos here and there. But yeah, I think it's been in need of a company like Producer Royalty for a while now. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome, man.
Exactly.
Needed someone
Exactly.
that knows their shit, basically, because a lot of
Yeah,
people will make content, but they might not fully understand it themselves. So it's good that you've actually got those credentials and that background.
yeah,
Yeah, and I build it producer royalty out like with the idea of not being fully myself, not being entirely in the day to day of the business. So that way, I have the opportunity to spend 30 hours a week making content and putting energy
Mm.
into this. If I operated like most lawyers, managers, not managers, most lawyers, and if I was completely in the business, I wouldn't have time for content. So that's why through producer royalty, you're going to get better content than any other person on the business side.
It's
yeah,
good to know.
yeah, man.
Awesome.
Is there
Awesome.
anything you
Yeah.
want people to check out now? Like, I know you have is it the playbook, or the course that you just released
Yep.
that you
So
were
yeah,
talking about in the
I
last
just
video?
released the placement playbook, and in there we like I said earlier in this video, we break down the full placement process, beginning to end, real emails you'll get, real things that we say, real invoice templates and producer agreements, and everything that you'll see in the placement process. There's definitely not anything close to this available on the internet. So if you are interested in getting a full walkthrough of the placement process and make sure that you're getting as much money in your pocket from independent art releases or major releases, feel free to check that out. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to pitch that real quick.
No problem, man. We'll definitely leave a link to that for sure.
Yeah,
I've got it open here, so I'll make sure that happens. Um,
Dope.
but yeah, we appreciate your time, man. I think that was a sick episode. Sometimes
yeah,
these podcasts, like, because it's just us free talking, we will talk about random stuff like traveling or childhood experiences or whatever. But then when we have guests on, like yourself, this one was just one that's just full of gems and game for people. So it's nice to switch it up and have something real educational. I think people will like this one.
yeah.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to come on anytime and to collaborate anyway. And love to have you guys on my podcast as well too. So maybe we can set that up.
Of course, man. Whenever
Yeah,
you're ready.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Dope. Yeah, we're gonna set it up. I'll be
Nice.
in. I want to do in-person episodes. So when I'll be in the UK soon, and
That'd be sick.
hopefully Bangkok soon. What is there a music scene in Bangkok, Ocean?
Not really. I mean, there's Thai music, but that's not the most popular music here. They're more into, if it's mainstream stuff, then K-pop or like really
Mm,
commercial EDM or the big hip hop hits. Yeah, very basically the most commercial they're into.
gotcha. So
Yeah.
you haven't found too many. Well, yeah, I'm doing like chapters of the podcast, so going to major cities. So I didn't know if Bangkok, aside from you, I could find some people to interview. But we'll
Yeah,
talk about that. I'll be in
in
Bangkok
terms of
either
like
way
a
soon.
huge music scene, not really. Nah, I wouldn't say
Mm,
so.
yeah, dope. Well, I'll see you in Bangkok soon either way.
For sure, man.
Yeah, we'll have to link in Bangkok at some point.
Yeah,
Or
man.
Bali. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. But thank you guys. Appreciate it. And
Yeah, we
Yeah, you too,
appreciate
yeah.
you.
man. Yeah,
Thanks again, bro.
Peace.
But yeah, for anyone
All right.
listening, just check out his link in the description and appreciate you all for listening. We'll see you in the next one.
peace.
Peace.